thoughts on Obama's approach to fighting AIDS?
Well, I mean, I think one of the things that's really striking about the Obama administration on a whole host of stuff is the way they've undermined themselves. I look at World AIDS Day that we've just had. They had a lot of really great news to announce that day, and they stepped on it by announcing an escalation of their war in Afghanistan instead. So that was difficult. They've lifted the travel ban, which means we're going to get the International AIDS Conference here in the United States. It's going to be in D.C. in 2012. That's a big deal. D.C. is a place that desperately needs that kind of attention. And the administration going in gets it on paper. They get that this is a black epidemic. They get that it's going to take a massive investment, and most importantly, they get that we need a strategy. The U.S. has always asked for foreign nations asking for aid for their HIV programs to have a national plan for how they're going to spend the money. Believe it or not, the United States in all of these years has never had one. And so we spend, I think it's $2 billion a year, willy-nilly. And the Obama administration gets that we need to have a plan, and they've hired some smart people to go out and write the plan. The problem is I fear whether they're going to have the political will and the political know-how to move the plan through Washington, so we'll have to see.
And what are your thoughts on recent efforts to put same-sex marriage on the books in California and Maine, and the response from the black community?
Yeah, I mean, I think the marriage conversation's tough, right? Because on one hand, it is here. It's here. There's no avoiding it. It's here, and you have to defend yourself when you're being beat up. You being the gay community. On the other hand, I'm not sure it's the smartest expenditure of resources. A lot of places, particularly places like California, already have the rights in question. We're talking about the name and the recognition, and I think that's important. Don't get me wrong. I don't want to undermine that, but there are so many deep needs in our community, and particularly in black communities, in black gay communities, and rural gay communities, and a whole host of places where we don't have gay meccas. There's a whole host of needs to just creating basic space, homeless youth, HIV, violence against gay people. There's all of these things that we really need resources desperately for and aren't getting, and I worry that marriage sucks the energy up for that. And when it comes to the question of race, I think that ironically the difficulty that we've seen in pushing marriage in some both rural and people of color communities reflects the fact that we've spent so little time pushing anything else for gay people in those communities. So we haven't opened up any space in our community, and we're going to talk about that a little bit tonight. We haven't opened up any space in our community, and then suddenly we want the community's support for these big political aims, and the two things don't really go together.
Why are people of color dying at horrible rates from HIV/AIDS?
Well, that's a big question. I could get a Nobel Prize if I could answer it quickly, but it's a host of factors. Number one, people of color are dying at horrible rates from a lot of stuff: diabetes, heart disease, cancer, infant mortality, you name it. We're not doing very well on a whole host of health factors, and so it's no surprise that would be true for HIV as well. And then there's some some real structural issues. We spent years and years and years ignoring needle exchange, and we got a lot of black infections through injection drug use in the 80s during the drug epidemics. We have rarely spent any public health dollars investing and targeting in the African American community around education. And then, you reach a tipping point at some point. There's a lot of really interesting research out there about the nature of sexual networks in black communities and how it facilitates communicable disease. Because we have small sexual networks, we have sex in small people on the block instead of across the country. And so when you introduce something like HIV, it can spread very quickly. There's a whole host of things. Another one that is rarely talked about is STDs. Black women have undiagnosed and untreated STDs at much higher rates than everybody else. And if you have an untreated or undiagnosed STD, it increases the likelihood of transmitting HIV when you encounter it by, I think it's threefold. So there's a whole host of things, but I think it all adds up to the fact that we're not healthy. That public health has failed in Black communities for literally centuries, and so it shouldn't be a surprise that we're faced with a difficult AIDS epidemic as well.
What is the importance of World AIDS Day to you?
With these annual celebrations of anything, it can be easy to lose sight of what's at the heart of it, right? Because it becomes a slogan. But if nothing else, it is a time when we really have the issue put before us and allowed to talk about it in a very public way. And in places like New York and Boston, sometimes that seems like we can take it for granted. But if you go down to places like Mobile, Alabama, or around the world in places like Harare, Zimbabwe, and AIDS remains something that is whispered about, or even inside families, in Black communities in places like New York City and Boston, AIDS is still something that's whispered about. I have a friend who said this World AIDS Day that she just found out her uncle died of AIDS. She had no idea that he had AIDS because they didn't talk about it in their family. So it's a forcing function, if nothing else, to get us having a public conversation about something that we need to spend more time talking about.